Alrighty, welcome back to another thrilling installment of, I think we're still calling this Fraggoth Reads, because we're lazy and can't come up with a better name. I'm now taking applications for people with better names. Also, people to do female voices, so I don't have to. So I don't have to embarrass myself. I'll keep doing them, I don't care. But if somebody did want to, we could coordinate, make something happen. I'd be okay with that, too. So we are still reading some more stories from more voices from the Radium Age, from courtesy of MIT Press. Today we've got two lined up for you. Let's see, what do we got? We got The Republic of the Southern Cross, written in 1907 by Valery Bryusov, and we've got The Third Drug, written in 1908 by one E. Nesbit. The introduction told us some minor detail about all of those. Do we know E. Nesbit's first name at all? I'm not seeing it. Nope. I'm not going to look them up on the Webernets. They did frequently publish under the pseudonym of E. Bland, a female author, apparently. So could be Elizabeth or Eunice, who knows. Anyway, we start off with the Republic of the Southern Cross. It's the sign of the Southern Cross. Oh gosh, now I'm going to have that stuck in my head all day. It was Dio, right? Yes. Possibly while he was with Black Sabbath. Probably while he was Black... Okay, now this I have to look up. Give me a minute. Now I am... That is going to bug me. So, because I should know that. Where's my Dio collection? Did I put it under Ronnie James Dio? I might have done it under Ronnie James Dio. I did. Because I'm smart. Let's see... I could be wrong about that, too. It would be embarrassing if I were. I know it's not Dream Evil or Lock Up the Wolves. Of course, it might not be called The Sign of the Southern Cross. I know that's the lyric, but... Okay. Yeah, it was while he was with Black Sabbath in Mob Rules. The Sign of the Southern Cross. Track 3, apparently, if this is correct. Anyway, that's enough yapping out of me. Classic Black Sabbath, and I am, of course, one of those people with the controversial opinion that Dio was better than, the other one. Sorry. Maybe that's a bad or wrong opinion, but it is the one I have. Not a lot better, although I am very fond of Ronnie James Dio. Was very, very bummed when he died a few years back. A few years back, like a decade ago. Good golly. More than a decade ago. Almost 2, I think. We're closer to 2 decades than we are to 1. Anyway, let's get rocking and rolling, as I have that song playing over and over in my head, and I'll try not to let it shine through. So this is Eastern European. I will mangle pronunciations. Feel free to correct me. I will appreciate it, even if even if I say something snarky about it, I do appreciate knowing how to actually pronounce it. I'm actually, other than Zvezhny, and I'm probably mangling that, which is the name of the star city that is going to be repeated repeatedly. Which is spelled Zvezdny, Zvezhny. Zvezhny? I'm not really sure. Out of morbid fascination, let's look that up so we don't look like total dorks. Zvezhny? Really? Zvezhny? I think? Shut up. Zvezhny. Okay. Zvezhny. Yeah. Okay. As ever, the AI overview is of dubious value when it says ZV pronounced quickly together as a voiced consonant, which is fine, but then it says, like ZV in zircon. And you'll notice there's no V in zircon. Zvezhny. Zvezhny. Okay. Looks like that is it. Zvezhny. Okay, so I've corrected myself early, which is good. Now I have to remember to say that, because that's not how it looks. Yeah, Zvezhny. Okay, very good. We're fine. Let's move on. I've confirmed that adequately to my... to my need of knowing that. Okay, very good. Let's rock and roll. Let me turn down these fans up just a smidge for a little less background noise, and we'll get rolling. You can't really hear them too well, but I can, and that's what matters. Okay, give me 1 second. I'm going to slurp down some water, and we will rock and roll. The Republic of the Southern Cross by Valery Bryusov. There have appeared lately a whole series of descriptions of the dreadful catastrophe which has overtaken the Republic of the Southern Cross. They are strikingly various, and give many details of a manifestly fantastic and improbable character. Evidently, the writers of these descriptions have lent a too ready ear to the narratives of the survivors from Star City, Zvezhny, the inhabitants of which, as is common knowledge, were all stricken with a psychical distemper.
For that reason, we consider it opportune to give an account here of all the reliable evidence which we have as yet. What? Oh, okay. My brain jumped ahead and did not. Anyway, for that reason, we consider it opportune to give an account here of all the reliable evidence which we have as yet of this tragedy of the Southern Pole. The Republic of the Southern Cross came into being some 40 years ago as a development from 300 steelworks established in the southern polar regions. In a circular note sent to each and every government of the whole world, the new state expressed its pretensions to all lands, whether mainland or island, within the limits of the Antarctic Circle, as also all parts of these lands stretching beyond the line. It announced its readiness to purchase from the various other states affected the lands which they considered to be under their special protectorate. The pretensions of the new republic did not meet with any opposition on the part of the 15 great powers of the world. Debatable points concerning certain islands lying entirely outside the polar circle, but closely related to the southern polar state, were settled by special treaties. On the fulfillment of the various formalities, the Republic of the Southern Cross was received into the family of world states, and its representatives were recognized by all governments. The chief city of the Republic, having the name of Zvyozdny, I'll get there, was situated at the actual pole itself. At that imaginary point where the Earth's axis passes and all earthly meridians become one, stood the town hall, and the roof with its pointed towers looked upon the nadir of the heavens. The streets of the town extended along meridians from the town hall, and these meridians were intersected by other streets in concentric circles. The height of all the buildings was the same, as was also their external appearance. There were no windows in the walls, as all the houses were lit by electricity, and the streets were lighted by electricity. Because of the severity of the climate, an impenetrable and opaque roof had been built over the town, with powerful ventilators for a constant change of air. These localities of the globe have but 1 day in 6 months, and 1 long night also of 6 months, but the streets of Zvyozdny we're going to stumble on that every time. And the second I don't is when you should wonder if I'm an imposter. These localities of the globe have but 1 day in 6 months, and 1 long night also of 6 months. But the streets of Zvyozdny were always lighted by a bright and even light. In the same way, in all seasons of the year, the temperature of the streets was kept at one and the same height. What? In the same way, in all seasons... Oh, in the same way, in all seasons of the year, the temperature of the streets was kept at one and the same height. Okay, there we go. Yeah, that threw me. According to the last census, the population of Zvyozdny had reached 2.5 millions. The whole of the remaining population of the Republic, numbering 50 millions, were concentrated in the neighborhood of the ports and factories. These other points were marked by the settlement of millions of people in towns which in external characteristics were reminiscent of Zvyozdny. Thanks to a clever application of electric power, the entrance to the local havens remained open all the year round. Overhead, electric railways connected the most populated parts of the Republic, and every day tens of thousands of people and millions of kilograms of material passed along these roads from one town to another. The interior of the country remained uninhabited. Travelers looking out of the train window saw before them only monotonous wilderness, white in winter and overgrown with wretched grass during the 3 months of summer. Wild animals had long since been destroyed, and for human beings there was no means of sustenance. More remarkable was the hustling life of the ports and industrial centers. In order to give some understanding of the life, it is perhaps enough to say that, of late, years about 7/10 of the whole of the world's output of metal. Oh, I see. Okay. I was thinking it was going to do the H.G. Wells and put, like, too few commas. And that's also true. But instead, a line break got me. So, that's on me. Have I mentioned I'm blind reading these? I have not read these before. so my mind is not in, and because it's all different authors, I have to pick up on syntactical differences in a big way, on the fly. Okay, in order to give some understanding of the life, it is perhaps enough to say that of late years about 7/10. Okay, give me a minute here. It's perhaps enough to say that of late years about 7/10 of the whole of the world's output of metal has come from the state mines of the Republic. It's that years. You could have removed years and it'd be fine. But that's not how it's written, so we're going to do it how it's written, and hopefully not stumble on it this time. In order to give some understanding of the life, it is perhaps enough to say that of late years about 7/10 of the whole of the world's output of metal has come from the state mines of the Republic. The Constitution of the Republic, according to outward signs, appeared to be the realization of extreme democracy. The only fully enfranchised citizens were the metal workers, who numbered about 60% of the whole population. The factories and mines were state property. The life of the miners was facilitated by all possible conveniences, and even with luxury. At their disposal, apart from magnificent accommodation and a recherche cuisine, were various educational institutions and means of amusement. Libraries, museums, theaters, concerts, halls for all types of sport, etc. The number of working hours in the day were small in the extreme. The training and teaching of children, the giving of medical and legal aid, and the ministry of the various religious cults were all taken upon itself by the state. Ample provision for all the needs and even whims of the workmen of the state factories having been made, no wages whatever were paid. But families of citizens who had served 20 years in a factory, or who in their years of service had died or become enfeebled, received a handsome life pension on condition that they did not leave the Republic. From the workmen, by universal ballot, the representatives of the law-making chamber of the Republic were elected, and this chamber had cognizance of all the questions of the political life of the country, being, however, without power to alter its fundamental laws. It must be said that this democratic exterior concealed the purely autocratic tyranny of the shareholders and directors of a former trust. Giving up to others the places of deputies in the chamber, they inevitably brought in their own candidates as directors of the factories. In the hands of the board of directors was concentrated the economic life of the country. The directors received all the orders and assigned them to the various factories for fulfillment. They purchased the materials and the machines for the work. They managed the whole business of the factories. Through their hands passed immense sums of money, to be reckoned in milliards. The law-making chamber only certified the entries of debits and credits in the upkeep of the factories, the accounts being handed to it for that purpose, and the balance on these accounts greatly exceeded the whole budget of the Republic. The influence of the board of directors in the international relationships of the Republic was immense. Its decisions might ruin whole countries. The prices fixed by them determined the wages of millions of laboring masses over the whole earth. And, moreover, the influence of the board, though indirect, was always decisive in the internal affairs of the Republic. The law-making chamber, in fact, appeared to be only the humble servant of the will of the board. This is cutting kind of deep. Does this seem familiar to anyone? Oh, it's democracy. It's totally fine. It's too bad that, like, the one economic driver of the entire country, or any and all economic drivers of the entire country, are owned by fat cats who, incidentally, can set all the laws.
I wonder where I've heard that before. Why is this so familiar?
I don't know. Sorry, I'm just seething a little. For the preservation of power in its own hands, the board was obliged to regulate mercilessly the whole life of the country. Though appearing to have liberty, the life of the citizens was standardized even to the most minute details. The buildings of all the towns of the Republic were according to one and the same pattern fixed by law. The decoration of all buildings used by the workmen, though luxurious to a degree, were strictly uniform. All received exactly the same food at exactly the same time. The clothes given out from the government stores were unchanging, and in the course of tens of years were of one and the same cut. At a signal from the town hall, at a definite hour, it was forbidden to go out of the houses. The whole press of the country was subject to a sharp censorship. That is, press with a capital P, as in the third estate? The media. The press. The whole press of the country was subject to a sharp censorship. No articles directed against the dictatorship of the board were allowed to see light. But, as a matter of fact, the whole country was so convinced of the benefit of this dictatorship that the compositors themselves would have refused to set the type of articles criticizing the board. The factories were full of the board's spies. At the slightest manifestation of discontent with the board, the spies hastened to arrange meetings and dissuade the doubters with passionate speeches. The fact that the life of the workmen of the Republic was the object of the envy of the entire world was, of course, a disarming argument. It is said that in cases of continued agitation by certain individuals, the board did not hesitate to resort to political murder. In any case, during the whole existence of the Republic, the universal ballot of the citizens never brought to power one representative who was hostile to the directors. The population of Zvyodny was composed chiefly of workmen who had served their time. They were, so to speak, government shareholders. The means which they received from the state allowed them to live richly. It is not astonishing, therefore, that Zvyodny was reckoned one of the gayest cities in the world. Syntactic mutation is fun. For various entrepreneurs and entertainers, it was a gold mine. The celebrities of the world brought hither their talents. It means it's a happy, bustling place. Don't get excited. The gayest city in the world. This is post-Frisco, I guess. Well, if 3 months of the year, Antarctica, the South Pole, is exposed to sunlight with no ice cap, then yeah, probably SF is underwater. San Francisco. So, they got beat out, man. What can I say? I should do a rant on how that place is substantially more conservative than you think it is. It gets painted as like this location, and there are aspects of it being a liberal bastion, but man, there's a lot of money there, and when you have money, you have certain attitudes that come with it. Without getting on a rant that could be regarded as a political one. For various, I'll just take the paragraph from the top. The population of Zvyozhny... I keep stumbling over this. Reasonably closed. Yeah. Zvyozhny. Zvyozhny. Yes, okay. It's like you're speaking backwards. That's what it's like. Zvyozhny. Yeah. Anyway. The population of Zvyozhny was composed chiefly of workmen who had served their time. They were, so to speak, government shareholders. The means which they received from the state allowed them to live richly. It is not astonishing, therefore, that Zvyozhny was reckoned one of the gayest cities of the world. For various entrepreneurs and entertainers, it was a gold mine. The celebrities of the world brought hither their talents. Here were the best operas, best concerts, best exhibitions. Here were brought out the best informed gazettes. The shops of Zvyozhny, amazed by the richness... Oh, they caused amazement. Okay. I'm not used to people phrasing it like that, but yes, that is correct. The shops of Zvyozhny, something like that. The shops of... I am not built for this Eastern European shit. The shops of Zvyozhny, amazed by the richness of their choice of goods. Yes, they caused amazement. Amazed, yes. The shops of Zvyozhny, amazed by the richness of their choice of goods. The restaurants by the luxury and the delicacy of their service. Resorts of evil, where all forms of debauch invented in either the ancient or the modern world were to be found, abounded. What the hell? Resorts of evil. Evil resorts. It's like a spa. Or a ski resort. As long as it's not a timeshare. Resorts of evil, where all forms of debauch invented in either the ancient or the modern world were to be found, abounded. However, the governmental regulation of life was preserved in Zvyozhny also. It is true that the decorations of lodgings and the fashions of dress were not compulsorily determined, but the law forbidding the exit from the house after a certain hour remained in force. A strict censorship of the press was maintained, and many spies were kept by the board. Order was officially maintained by the popular police, but at the same time there existed the secret police of the all-cognizant board. Such was, in its general character, the system of life in the Republic of the Southern Cross and in its capital. The problem of the future historian will be to determine how much this system was responsible for the outbreak and spread of that fatal disease which brought to destruction the town of Zvyozhny, and with it, perhaps, the whole young Republic. The first cases of the disease of contradiction were observed in the Republic some 20 years ago. It had then the character of a rare and sporadic malady. Nevertheless, the local mental experts were much interested by it, and gave a circumstantial account of the symptoms at the International Medical Congress at Lasha, where several reports of it were read. Later, it was somehow or other forgotten, though in the mental hospitals of Zvyozhny there never was any difficulty in finding examples. The disease received its name from the fact that the victims continuously contradicted their wishes by their actions, wishing one thing, but saying and doing another. The scientific name of the disease is mania contradicens. It begins with fairly feeble symptoms, generally those of characteristic aphasia. The stricken, instead of saying yes, say no. Wishing to say caressing words, they splutter abuse, etc. The majority also begin to contradict themselves in their behavior. Intending to go to the left, they turn to the right. Thinking to raise the brim of a hat so as to see better, they would pull it down over their eyes instead, and so on. As the disease develops, contradiction overtakes the whole of the bodily and spiritual life of the patient, exhibiting infinite diversity conformable with the idiosyncrasies of each. I don't care what anyone says. I may not be able to pronounce Zvyozhny, but I can certainly say, in general, the speech of the patient becomes unintelligible and his actions... but I can say, without any effort, as the disease develops, contradiction overtakes the whole of the body and spiritual life of the patient, exhibiting infinite diversity conformable with the idiosyncrasies of each. I don't care what anyone says. I'm damn good.
Those are long words with lots of syllables.
I could say the words that are long. I can't say Zvyozhny. Oh, I think we did it.
It's like a neck-jaw interface thing. Paired with my lips and the tip of the tongue in my teeth. They do not like that word.
Almost as bad as corridor, which I can say like a Brit. You know, very officious, the corridor. But every time I run into it, and God knows Peter Watts did it to me all the time, I'm like, is it corridor? Does anyone know what I'm saying when I say that? Do I know what I'm saying? Anyway, let's get back on track here. Cha-cha-cha. In general, the speech of the patient becomes unintelligible and his actions absurd. The normality of the physiological functions of the organism is disturbed. Acknowledging the unwisdom of his behavior, the patient gets into a state of extreme excitement bordering even upon insanity. Honk honk. Many commit suicide, sometimes in fits of madness, sometimes in moments of spiritual brightness. Others perish from a rush of blood to the brain. In almost all cases, the disease is mortal. Cases of recovery are extremely rare. The epidemic character was taken by mania contradescens during the middle months of this year in Zvyazhny. Up till this time, the number of cases had never exceeded 2% of the total number of patients in the hospitals. But this proportion suddenly rose to 25% during the month of May, autumn month, as it is called in the Republic, and it continued to increase during the succeeding months with as great rapidity. Oh, yeah, because it's the South Pole. Yes. Yes. Autumn month. That does actually track. Late autumn, but yes. And it can... Okay, let's take that sentence from the top. Where are you? But this proportion suddenly rose to 25% during the month of May, autumn month as it is called in the Republic, and it continued to increase during the succeeding months with as great rapidity. By the middle of June, there were already 2% of the whole population, that is, about 50,000 people, officially notified as suffering from contradiction. We have no statistical details of any later date. The hospitals overflowed. The doctors on the spot proved to be altogether insufficient. And, moreover, the doctors themselves and the nurses in the hospitals caught the disease also. So what this is reminding me of, actually, is a book that will be written many years, like decades later, by John Brunner. Was it The Sheep Look Up? Or was it... No, it was Stand on Zanzibar, where a big part of that is discussing the concept of muckers. People who run amok. And that's kind of like one of the great threats facing society. So this is kind of a universal theme. It's like, is everybody actually on the same page? And what causes people to run amok, sort of thing. And this is kind of exploring that sociological concept. I'm here for this, is what I'm saying. I like this one. There was very soon no one to whom to appeal for medical aid, and a correct register of patients became impossible. The evidence given by eyewitnesses, however, is in agreement on this point, that it was impossible to find a family in which someone was not suffering. The number of healthy people rapidly decreased as panic caused a wholesale exodus from the town, but the number of the stricken increased. It is probably true that in the month of August all who had remained in Zvyazhny were down with this physical malady. It is possible to follow the first developments of the epidemic by the columns of the local newspapers, headed in ever larger type as the mania grew. Since the detection of the disease in its early stages was very difficult, the chronicle of the first days of the epidemic is full of comic episodes. A train conductor on the Metropolitan Railway, instead of receiving money from the passengers, himself pays them. A policeman, whose duty it was to regulate the traffic, confuses it all day long. A visitor to a gallery, walking from room to room, turns all the pictures with their faces to the wall. A newspaper page of proof, being corrected by the hand of a reader already overtaken by the disease, is printed next morning full of the most amusing absurdities. At a concert, a sick violinist suddenly interrupts the harmonious efforts of the orchestra with the most dreadful dissonances. A whole long series of such happenings gave plenty of scope for the wits of local journalists. But several instances of a different type of phenomenon caused the jokes to come to a sudden end. The first was that a doctor overtaken by the disease prescribed poison for a girl patient in his care, and she perished. For 3 days the newspapers were taken up with this circumstance. Then 2 nurses walking in the town gardens were overtaken by contradiction and cut the throats of 41 children. Jesus. This event staggered the whole city. But on the evening of the same day, 2 victims fired the mitrailleuse. That's a new one on me. I have some French background, but I don't know that one. But on the evening of the same day, 2 victims fired the mitrailleuse from the quarters of the town militia and killed and injured some 500 people. I guess it's something military. Let me find out. Yeah, I guess wall guards, although a mitrailleuse is apparently some kind of a automatic weapon from that era. Ah, here we go. Yeah, it's a machine gun. Breech loading. From France. No shock. Mitrailleuse. Yeah. Mitrailleuse. Anyway. Where were we? Oh, fired as in shot, not fired as in... Okay. Okay. I should have figured after 2 nurses cut the throats of 41 children that this would be extra grim, and I was like, oh, well, the mitrailleuse must just be dudes that got fired. No. No. No, it's a lot worse than that. But on the evening of the same day, 2 victims fired the mitrailleuse from the quarters of the town militia and killed and injured some 500 people. That, all the newspapers and the society of the town, helps if I read it correctly, golly. At that, all the newspapers and the society of the town cried for prompt measures against the epidemic. At a special session of the combined board and legal chamber, it was decided to invite doctors from other towns and from abroad, to enlarge the existing hospitals, to build new ones, and to construct everywhere isolation barracks for the sufferers, to print and distribute 500,000 copies of a brochure on the disease, its symptoms and means of cure, to organize on all the streets of the town a special patrol of doctors and their helpers for giving of first aid to those who had not been removed from private lodgings. It was also decided to run special trains daily on all the railways for the removal of the patients, as the doctors were of the opinion that change of air was one of the best remedies. Similar measures were undertaken at the same time by various associations, societies, and clubs. A Society for Struggle with the Epidemic was even founded, and the members gave themselves to the work with remarkable self-devotion. But in spite of all these measures, the epidemic gained ground each day, taking in its course old men and little children, working people and resting people, chaste and debauched. Soon the whole of society was enveloped in the unconquerable elemental terror of the unheard-of calamity. The flight from Zvyazhny commenced. At first, only a few fled, and these were prominent dignitaries, directors, members of the legal chamber and of the board, who hastened to send their families to the southern cities of Australia and Patagonia. Following them, the accidental elements of the population fled, those foreigners gladly sojourning in the gayest city of the southern hemisphere, theatrical artists, various business agents, women of light behavior. Wow. Yeah, you hear that, women of light behavior? You're not only a particle, you're also trying to be a wave. Stop that. That's bad, apparently. Don't be a particle in a wave. Don't exhibit characteristics of a particle in a wave simultaneously. You're confusing the menfolk, okay? Gosh. I can only assume that's like jet-setting women or some euphemism for women of ill repute. I don't know. Tomboys, independent women who don't need no man. Well, because they can operate as both a particle, exhibit characteristics of both a particle and a wave. Yeah, they don't need a man. They're light. Anyway, I'll shut up. It was a dumb joke, and I regret it immensely, but at the same time. You go, girl. You be exhibiting characteristics of both a particle and a wave. Where were we? I'm just gonna take this from the top. I'm sorry. I don't know why I'm getting the giggles from that. That was really lame. You know what? No. That was an okay joke. I'm okay with that one. The flight from Zvyozhny commenced. At first, only a few fled, and these were prominent dignitaries, directors, members. The flight from Zvyozhny commenced. At first, only a few fled, and these were prominent dignitaries, directors, members of the legal chamber and of the board, who hastened to send their families to the southern cities of Australia and Patagonia. Following them, the accidental elements of the population fled, those foreigners gladly sojourning in the gayest city of the southern hemisphere, theatrical artists, various business agents, women of light behavior. When the epidemic showed no signs of abating, the shopkeepers fled. They hurriedly sold off all their goods and left their empty premises to the will of fate. With them went the bankers, the owners of theaters and restaurants, the editors and the publishers. At last, even the established inhabitants were moved to go. According to law, the exit of workmen from the Republic without special sanction from the government was forbidden on pain of loss of pension. Deserters began to increase. The employees of the town institutions fled. The militia fled. The hospital nurses fled. The chemists, the doctors. The desire to flee became, in its turn, a mania. Everyone fled who could. The stations of the electric railway were crushed with immense crowds. Tickets were bought for huge sums of money and only held by fighting. For a place in a dirigible, which took only 10 passengers, one paid a whole fortune. At the moment of the going out of trains, new people would break into the compartments and take up places which they would not relinquish except by compulsion. Crowds stopped the trains which had been fitted up exclusively for patients, dragged the latter out of the carriages, and compelled the engine drivers to go on. From the end of May, train service, except between the capital and the ports, ceased to work. From Zvyozhny, the trains went out overfull, passengers standing on the steps and in the corridors, even daring to cling on the outside, despite the fact that with the speed of contemporary electric railways, any person doing such a thing risks suffocation. The steamship companies of Australia, South America, and South Africa grew inordinately rich, transporting the refugees of the Republic to other lands. The two southern companies of dirigibles were not less prosperous, accomplishing, as they did, 10 journeys a day and bringing away from Zvyozhny the last belated millionaires. On the other hand, trains arrived at Zvyozhny almost empty, for no wages was it possible to persuade people to come work at the capital. Only now and again eccentric tourists and seekers of new sensations arrived at the towns. It is reckoned that from the beginning of the exodus to the 22nd of June, when the regular service of trains ceased, there passed out of Zvyozhny by the 6 railroads some 1.5 million people, that is, almost 2/3 of the whole population. By his enterprise, valor, and strength of will, one man earned for himself eternal fame, and that was the president of the board, Horace DeVille. At the special session of the 5th of June, DeVille was elected, both by the board and by the legal chamber, dictator over the town, and was given the title of Nachalnik. He had sole control over the town treasury, the militia, and of the municipal institutions. At that time, it was decided to remove from Zvyozhny to a northern port the government of the Republic and the archives. The name of Horace DeVille should be written in letters of gold among the most famous names of history. For 6 weeks he struggled with the growing anarchy in the town. He succeeded in gathering around him a group of helpers as unselfish as himself. He was able to enforce discipline, both in the militia and in the municipal service generally, for a considerable time, though these bodies were terrified by the general calamity and decimated by the epidemic. Hundreds of thousands owe their escape to Horace DeVille, as, thanks to his energy and organizing power, it was possible for them to leave. He lightened the misery of the last days of thousands of others, giving them the possibility of dying in hospitals, carefully looked after, and not simply being stoned or beaten to death by the mad crowd. And Deville preserved for mankind the chronicle of the catastrophe, for one cannot but consider as a chronicle his short but pregnant telegrams, sent several times a day from the town of Zvyozhny to the temporary residence of the government of the Republic at the northern port. Deville's first work on becoming Nachalnik of the town was to attempt to restore calm to the population. He issued manifestos proclaiming that the psychical infection was most quickly caught by people who were excited, and he called upon all healthy and balanced persons to use their authority to restrain the weak and nervous. Because that will not make them more excited. I don't know, dude. If someone's trying to restrain me, I'm going to get more nervous. I don't know what to tell you. Then Deville used the Society for Struggle with the Epidemic and put under the authority of its members all public places, theaters, meeting houses, squares, and streets. In these days there scarcely ever passed an hour but a new case of infection might be discovered. Now here, now there, one saw faces or whole groups of faces manifestly expressive of abnormality. The greater number of the patients, when they understood their condition, showed an immediate desire for help. But under the influence of the disease, this wish expressed itself in various types of hostile action directed against these standing near. The stricken wished to hasten home or to a hospital, but instead of doing this, they fled in fright to the outskirts of the town. The thought occurred to them to ask the passer-by to do something for them, but instead of that, they seized him by the throat. In this way, many were suffocated, struck down, or wounded with knife or stick. So the crowd, whenever it found itself in the presence of a man suffering from contradiction, took to flight. At these moments, the members of the society would appear on the scene, capture the sick man, calm him, and take him to the nearest hospital. It was their work to reason with the crowd and explain that there was really no danger, that the general misfortune had simply spread a little further, and it was their duty to struggle with it to the full extent of their powers. So yeah, the horror aspect of that, where you're kind of trapped in your own mind, like perceiving everything, but every single command you give out, you do the opposite, is pretty horrifying. That's some decent, Phantom Limb style horror. Something I've noticed that Peter Watts has done rather a lot of, where you're not in full control of your faculties or your body. Like your body will just do something. There's a couple of good short stories he's done in like the last half decade or so that deal with that. The sudden infection of persons present in the audience of theaters or meeting houses often led to the most tragic catastrophes. Once, at a performance of opera, some hundreds of people stricken mad in a mass, instead of expressing their approval of the vocalists, flung themselves on the stage and scattered blows right and left. At the Grand Dramatic Theatre, an actor, whose role it was to commit suicide by a revolver shot, fired the revolver several times at the public. It was, of course, blank cartridge, but it so acted on the nerves of those present that it hastened the symptoms of the disease in many of whom it was latent. In many in whom it was latent. In the confusion which followed, several scores of people were killed. But worst of all was that which happened in the Theater of Fireworks. Well, that, obviously, with a lead-in like that, it is going to be pretty dire. The detachment of militia posted there in case of fire suddenly set fire to the stage and to the veils by which the various light effects are obtained. Not less than 200 people were burnt or crushed to death. After that occurrence, Horace Deville closed all the theaters and concert rooms in the town. The robbers and thieves now began to constitute a grave danger for the inhabitants, and in the general disorganization they were able to carry their depredations very far. It is said that some of them came to Zvyozhny from abroad. Some simulated madness in order to escape punishment, others felt it unnecessary to make any pretense of disguising their open robberies. Gangs of thieves entered the abandoned shops, broke into private lodgings, and took off the more valuable things or demanded gold. They stopped people in the streets and stripped them of their valuables, such as watches, rings, and bracelets. And there accompanied the robberies outrage of every kind, even of the most disgusting. The Nachalnik sent companies of militia to hunt down the criminals, but they did not dare to join in open conflict. There were dreadful moments when among the militia or among the robbers would suddenly appear a case of the disease, and friend would turn his weapon against friend. At first, the Nachalnik banished from the town the robbers who fell under arrest. But those who had charge of the prison trains liberated them, in order to take their places. Then the Nachalnik was obliged to condemn the criminals to death. So, after almost 3 centuries break, capital punishment was introduced once more on the earth. In June, a general scarcity of the indispensable articles of food and medicine began to make itself felt. The import by rail diminished. Manufacture within the town practically ceased. Deville organized the town bakeries and the distribution of bread and meat to the people. In the town itself, the same common tables were set up as had long since been established in the factories. But it was not possible to find sufficient people for kitchen and service. Some voluntary workers toiled till they were exhausted, and they gradually diminished in numbers. The town crematoriums flamed all day, but the number of corpses did not decrease, but increased. They began to find bodies in the streets and left in houses. The municipal business, such as telegraph, telephone, electric light, water supply, sanitation, and the rest, were worked by fewer and fewer people. It is astonishing how much Deville succeeded in doing. He looked after everything and everyone. One conjectures that he never knew a moment's rest, and all who were saved testify unanimously that his activity was beyond praise. Now, wouldn't the irony be if Deville was infected the entire time and was just trying to commit incredible acts of evil and selfishness, but physically couldn't because of the disease? Wouldn't that be a delightful irony? The evilest man in the world tries to hold it all together. Towards the middle of June, shortage of labor on the railways began to be felt. There were not enough engine drivers or conductors. Oh, that's familiar. On the 17th of July, the first accident took place on the southwestern line, but the reason being the sudden attack of the engine driver. In the paroxysm of his disease, the driver took his train over a precipice onto a glacier, and almost all the passengers were killed or crippled. The news of this was brought to the town by the next train, and it came as a thunderbolt. A hospital train was sent off at once. It brought back the dead and the crippled, but towards the evening of that day, news was circulated that a similar catastrophe had taken place on the first line. 2 of the railway tracks connecting Zvyozhny with the outside world were damaged. Breakdown gangs were sent from Zvyozhny and from Northport to repair the lines, but it was almost impossible because of the winter temperature. There was no hope that on these lines train service would be resumed, at least in the near future. These catastrophes were simply patterns for new ones. The more alarmed the engine drivers became, the more liable they were to the disease, and to the repetition of the mistake of their predecessors. Just because they were afraid of destroying a train, they destroyed it. During the 5 days from the 18th to the 22nd of June, 7 trains with passengers were wrecked. Thousands of passengers perished from injuries or starved to death unrescued in the snowy wastes. Only very few had sufficient strength to return to the city by their own efforts. The 6 main lines connecting Zvyozhny with the outer world were rendered useless. The service of the dirigibles had ceased earlier. One of them had been destroyed by the enraged mob, the pretext given being that they were used exclusively for the rich. The others, one by one, were wrecked, the disease probably attacking the crew. The population of the city was at this time about 600,000. For some of the time they were only connected but with the world, For some time, they were only connected with the world by telegraph. On the 24th of June, the Metropolitan Railway ceased to run. On the 26th, the telephone service was discontinued. On the 27th, all chemists' shops except the large central store were closed. On the 1st of July, the inhabitants were ordered to come from the outer parts of the town into the central districts, so that order might better be maintained, food distributed, and medical aid afforded. Suburban dwellers abandoned their own quarters and settled in those which had lately been abandoned by fugitives. The sense of property vanished. No one was sorry to leave his own, no one felt it strange to take up his abode in other people's houses. Nevertheless, burglars and robbers did not disappear, though perhaps now one would rather call them demented beings than criminals. Though perhaps now one would rather call them demented beings than criminals. They continued to steal, and great hoards of gold have been discovered in the empty houses where they hid them, and precious stones beside the decaying body of the robber himself. It is astonishing that in the midst of universal destruction, life tended to keep its former course. There still were shopkeepers who opened their shops and sold for incredible sums the luxuries, flowers, books, guns, and other goods which they had preserved. Purchasers threw down their unnecessary gold ungrudgingly, and miserly merchanters hid it, God knows why. There existed secret resorts, with cards, women, and wine, whither unfortunates sought refuge and tried to forget dreadful reality. There the whole mingled with the diseased, and there is no chronicle of the scenes which took place. 2 or 3 newspapers still tried to preserve the significance of the written word in the midst of desolation. Copies of these newspapers are being sold now at 10 or 20 times their original value, and will undoubtedly become bibliographical rarities of the first degree. In their columns is reflected the horrors of the unfortunate town, described in the midst of the reigning madness and set by half-mad compositors. There were reporters who took note of the happenings of the town, journalists who debated hotly the condition of affairs, and even, feuilletonists. What is that? Feuilletonists? Okay, so that's like a foil, that's paper, paper workers of some kind. Oh, get banished. Sorry. AI viewers at some website I'm not going to name because it's gone now. Banished to Zvyozhny. What are you? So let's find out what that is real quick. That is feuilletonists. Feuilletonist. I don't know why I got an E in there. A journalist, essayist, or critic who writes for the feuilleton, a cultural, literary, or entertainment section traditionally found in European newspapers. Rather than hard news, they cover lifestyle, arts, and social commentary, using a light, engaging, and highly subjective tone. Am I pronouncing that correct? Feuilletonist, yes. Feuilletoniste. Feuilletoniste. A writer of feuilletons, especially a writer of regularly appearing critical or familiar essays or of a column. Got it. Got it. Itsy pitsy. Anyway, new one on me. Had not heard of that, or if I had, it's been so long that I cannot remember it. And it did not etch itself into my brain curves. We sand that puppy. There were reporters who took note of the happenings of the town, journalists who debated hotly the condition of affairs, and even feuilletonists who endeavored to enliven these tragic days. But the telegrams received from other countries, telling as they did of real healthy life, caused the souls of the readers in Zvyozhny to fall into despair. There were desperate attempts to escape. At the beginning of July, an immense crowd of women and children, led by a certain John Dew, decided to set out on foot for the nearest inhabited place, London town. Deville understood the madness of this attempt, but could not stop the people, and himself supplied them with warm clothing and provisions. This whole crowd of about 2,000 people were lost in the snow and in the continuous polar night. A certain Whiting started to preach a more heroic remedy. This was to kill all who were suffering from the disease, and he held that after that the epidemic would cease. He found a considerable number of adherents, though in those dark days the wildest, most inhuman proposal, which in any way promised deliverance, would have obtained attention. Whiting and his friends broke into every house in the town and destroyed whatever sick they found. They massacred the patients in the hospitals. They even killed those suspected to be unwell. Robbers and madmen joined themselves to these bands of ideal murderers. The whole town became their arena. In these difficult days, Horace Deville organized his fellow workers into a military force, encouraged them with his spirit, and set out to fight the followers of Whiting. This affair lasted several days. Hundreds of men fell on one side or another, till at last Whiting himself was taken. He appeared to be in the last stages of mania contradicens, and had to be taken to the hospital, where he soon perished instead of to the scaffold. On the 8th of July, one of the worst things happened. The controller of the central power station smashed all the machinery. The electric light failed, and the whole city was plunged into absolute darkness. As there was no other means of lighting and warming the city, the people were left in a helpless plight. Deville had, however, foreseen such an eventuality, and had accumulated a considerable quantity of torches and fuel. Bonfires were lighted in all the streets. Torches were distributed in thousands. But these miserable lights could not illuminate the gigantic perspectives of the city of Zvyozhny, the tens of kilometers of straight-line highways, the gloomy height of 13-story buildings. With the darkness, the last discipline of the city was lost. Terror and madness finally possessed all souls. The healthy could not be distinguished from the sick. There commenced a dreadful orgy of despairing. The moral sense of the people declined with astonishing rapidity. Culture slipped from off these people like a delicate bark, and revealed man, wild and naked, the man-beast as he was. All sense of right was lost, force alone was acknowledged. For women, the only law became that of desire and of indulgence. The most virtuous matrons behaved as the most abandoned, with no continence or faith, and used the vile language of the tavern. Young girls ran about the streets demented and unchaste. Drunkards made feasts in ruined cellars, not in any way distressed that amongst the bottles lay unburied corpses. All this was constantly aggravated by the breaking out of the disease afresh. Sad was the position of children, abandoned by their parents to the will of fate. They died of hunger, of injury after assault, and they were murdered both purposely and by accident. It is even affirmed that cannibalism took place. Just in case things weren't dark enough. In this last period of tragedy, Horace Deville could not, of course, afford help to the whole population. But he did arrange in the town hall shelter for those who still preserved their reason. The entrances to the building were barricaded, and sentries were kept continuously on guard. There was food and water for 3,000 people for 40 days. Deville, however, had only 1,800 people, and though there must have been other people with sound minds in the town, they could not have known what Deville was doing, and these remained in hiding in the houses. Many resolved to remain indoors till the end, and bodies have been found of many who must have died of hunger in their solitude. It is remarkable that among those who took refuge in the town hall, there were very few new cases of the disease. Deville was able to keep discipline in his small community. He kept till the last a journal of all that happened, and that journal, together with the telegrams, makes the most reliable source of evidence of the catastrophe. The journal was found in a secret cupboard of the town hall, where the most precious documents were kept. The last entry refers to the 20th of July. Deville writes that a demented crowd is assailing the building, and that he is obliged to fire with revolvers upon the people. "What I hope for," he adds, "I know not. No help can be expected before the spring. We have not the food to live till the spring, but I shall fulfill my duty to the end." These were the last words of Deville. Noble words. It must be added that on the 21st of July the crowd took the town hall by storm, and its defenders were all killed or scattered. The body of Deville has not yet been found, and there is no reliable evidence as to what took place in the town after the 21st. It must be conjectured, from the state in which the town was found, that anarchy reached its last limits. The gloomy streets, lit up by the glare of bonfires of furniture and books, can be imagined. They obtained fire by striking iron on flint. Crowds of drunkards and madmen danced wildly about the bonfires. Men and women drank together and passed the common cup from lip to lip. The worst scenes of sensuality were witnessed. Some sort of dark atavistic sense enlivened the souls of these townsmen, and half-naked, unwashed, unkempt, they danced the dances of their remote ancestors, the contemporaries of the cave bears, and they sang the same wild songs as did the hordes when they fell with stone axes upon the mammoth. With songs, with incoherent exclamations, with idiotic laughter, mingled the cries of those who had lost the power to express in words their own delirious dreams, mingled also the moans of those in the convulsions of death. Sometimes dancing gave way to fighting, for a barrel of wine, for a woman, or simply without reason, in a fit of madness brought about by contradictory emotion. There was nowhere to flee. The same dreadful scenes were everywhere, the same orgies everywhere, the same fights, the same brutal gaiety or brutal rage, or else absolute darkness, which seemed more dreadful, even more intolerable to the staggered imagination. Zvyazhny became an immense black box, in which were some thousands of man-resembling beings, abandoned in the foul air from hundreds of thousands of dead bodies, where amongst the living was not one who understood his own position. This was the city of the senseless, the gigantic madhouse, the greatest and most disgusting bedlam which the world has ever seen. And the madmen destroyed one another, stabbed or strangled one another, died of madness, died of terror, died of hunger, and of all the diseases which reigned in the infected air. It goes without saying that the government of the Republic did not remain indifferent to the great calamity which had overtaken the capital, but it very soon became clear that no help whatever could be given. No doctors, nurses, officers, or workmen of any kind would agree to go to Zvyazhny. After the breakdown of the railroad service and of the airships, it was, of course, impossible to get there, the climatic conditions being too great an obstacle. Moreover, the attention of the government was soon absorbed by cases of the disease appearing in other towns of the Republic. In some of these it threatened to take on the same epidemic character, and a social panic set in that was akin to what happened in Zvyazhny itself. A wholesale exodus from the more populated parts of the Republic commenced. The work in all the mines came to a standstill, and the entire industrial life of the country faded away. But thanks, however, to strong measures taken in time, the progress of the disease was arrested in these towns, and nowhere did it reach the proportions witnessed in the capital. The anxiety with which the whole world followed the misfortunes of the young republic is well known. At first, no one dreamed that the trouble could grow to what it did, and the dominant feeling was that of curiosity. The chief newspapers of the world, and in that number our own Northern European Evening News, sent their own special correspondents to Zvyazhny. to right up the epidemic. Many of these brave knights of the pen became victims of their own professional obligations. When the news became more alarming, various foreign governments and private societies offered their services to the Republic. Some sent troops, others doctors, others money, but the catastrophe developed with such rapidity that this goodwill could not obtain fulfillment. After the breakdown of the railway service, the only information received from Zhazhny was that of the telegrams sent by the Nachalnik. These telegrams were forwarded to the ends of the earth and printed in millions of copies. After the wreck of the electrical apparatus, the telegraph service lasted still a few days longer, thanks to the accumulators of the powerhouse. There is no accurate information as to why the telegraph service ceased altogether. Perhaps the apparatus was destroyed. The last telegram of Horace de Ville was that of the 27th of June. From that date, for almost 6 weeks, humanity remained without news of the capital of the Republic. During July, several attempts were made to reach Zvyazhny by air. Several new airships and aeroplanes were received by the Republic. But for a long time, all efforts to reach the city failed. At last, however, the aeronaut Thomas Billy succeeded in flying to the unhappy town. He picked up from the roof of the town 2 people in an extreme state of hunger and mental collapse. Looking through the ventilators, Billy saw that the streets were plunged in absolute darkness, but he heard wild cries and understood that there were still living human beings in the town. Billy, however, did not dare to let himself down into the town itself. Towards the end of August, one of the electric railways was put in order as far as the station Lissus, 105 kilometers from the town. A detachment of well-armed men passed into the town, bearing food and medical aid first, entering by the northwestern gates. They, however, could not penetrate further than the first blocks of buildings because of the dreadful atmosphere. They had to do their work step by step, clearing the bodies from the streets, disinfecting the air as they went. The only people whom they met were completely irresponsible. They resembled wild animals in their ferocity and had to be captured and held by force. About the middle of September, train service with Zvyazhny was once more established, and trains went regularly. At the time of writing, the greater part of the town has already been cleared. Electric light and heating are once more in working order. The only part of the town which has not been dealt with is the American quarter, but it is thought that there are no living beings there. About 10,000 people have been saved, but the greater number are apparently incurable. Those who have to any degree recovered evince a strong disinclination to speak of the life they have gone through. What is more, their stories are full of contradiction, and often not confirmed by documentary evidence. Various newspapers of the last days of July have been found. The latest to date, that of the 22nd of July, gives the news of the death of Horace de Ville and the invitation of shelter in the town hall. There are, indeed, some other pages marked August, but the words printed thereon make it clear that the author, who was probably setting in type in his own There are, indeed, some other pages marked August, but the words printed thereon make it clear that the author, who was probably setting in type his own delirium, was quite irresponsible. The diary of Horace de Ville was discovered, with its regular chronicle of events from the 28th of June to the 20th of July. The frenzies of the last days in the town are luridly witnessed by the things discovered in streets and houses. Mutilated bodies everywhere, the bodies of the starved, of the suffocated, of those murdered by the insane, and some even half-eaten. Bodies were found in the most unexpected places, in the tunnels of the Metropolitan Railway, in sewers, in various sheds, in boilers. The demented had sought refuge from their surrounding terrors in all possible places. The interiors of most houses had been wrecked, and the booty which robbers had found it impossible to dispose of had been hidden. It will certainly be several months profitable once more, now which could accompany who are cleansing the streets and houses of the former inhabitants to seek the bodies of their relatives and to glean the remains of their fortunes. Several tourists attracted by the amazing spectacle of the empty town have also arrived. 2 businessmen have opened hotels and are doing pretty well. A small café chantant is to be opened shortly, the troupe for which has already been engaged. Sent out a new correspondent, Mr. Andrew Ewald, in hopes to obtain circumstantial news of all the fresh discoveries which may be made in the unfortunate capital of the Republic of the Southern Cross. And that was The Republic of the Southern Cross, written in 1907 by Valery Bryusov. The Third Drug by E. Nesbit. 1. Roger Roxham looked around his studio before he blew out the candle, and wondered whether, perhaps, he looked for the last time. It was large and empty, yet his trouble had filled it, and, pressing against him in the prison of those 4 walls, forced him out into the world, where lights and voices and the presence of other men should give him room to draw back, to set a space between it and him, to decide whether he would ever face it again. He and it alone together. The nature of his trouble is not germane to this story. There was a woman in it, of course, and money, and a friend, and regrets, and embarrassments. And all of these reached out tendrils that wove and interwove till they made a puzzle problem of which heart and brain were now weary. He blew out the candle and went quietly downstairs. It was 9 at night, a soft night of May in Paris. Where should he go? He thought of the Seine, and took an omnibus. When at last it stopped, he got off. And so strange was the place to him that it almost seemed as though the trouble itself had been left behind. He did not feel it in the length of 3 or 4 streets that he traversed slowly, but in the open space, very light and lively, where he recognized the Taverne de Paris, and knew himself in Montmartre. The trouble set its teeth in his heart again, and he broke away from the lamps and the talk to struggle with it in the dark, quiet streets beyond. A man braced for such a fight has little thought to spare for the details of his surroundings. The next thing that Roxham knew of the outside world was the fact which he had known for some time, that he was not alone in the street. There was someone on the other side of the road keeping pace with him. Yes, certainly keeping pace, for, as he slackened his own, the feet on the other pavement also went more slowly. And now they were 4 feet, not 2. Where had the other man sprung from? He had not been there a moment ago. And now, from an archway a little ahead of him, a 3rd man came. Roxham stopped. Then 3 men converged upon him, and, like a sudden magic lantern picture on a sheet prepared, there came to him all that he had heard and read of Montmartre. Dark archways, knives, Apaches, and men who went away from homes where they were beloved and never again returned. He, too, well, if he never returned again, it would be quicker than the Seine, and, in the event of ultra-mundane possibilities, safer. He stood still and laughed in the face of the man who first reached him. "Well, my friend," said he, and at that the other 2 drew close. "Monsieur walks late," said the first, a little confused, as it seemed, by that laugh. "And will walk still later if it pleases him," said Roger. "Good night, my friends." "Ah," said the second, "friends do not say adieu so quickly. Monsieur will tell us the hour. I have not a watch, said Roger quite truthfully. I will assist you to search for it, said the third man, and laid a hand on his arm. Roger threw it off. The man with the hand staggered back. The knife searches more surely, said the second. No, said the third quickly. He is too heavy. I, for one, will not carry him afterwards. They closed round him, hustling him between them. Their pale, degenerate faces spun and swung round him in the struggle. For there was a struggle. He had not meant that there should be a struggle. Someone would hear. Someone would come. But if any heard, none came. The street retained its empty silence. The houses, masked in close shutters, kept their reserve. The four were wrestling, all pressed close together in a writhing bunch, drawing breath hardly through set teeth, their feet slipping and not slipping on the rounded cobblestones. The contact with these creatures, the smell of them, and the warm, greasy texture of their flesh, as, in the conflict, his face or neck met neck or face of theirs, Roger felt a cold rage possess him. He wrung two clammy hands apart and threw something off, something that staggered back, clattering, fell in the gutter, and lay there. It was then that Roger felt the knife. Its point glanced off the cigarette case in his breast pocket and bit sharply at his inner arm. And at the sting of it, Roger knew, suddenly and quite surely, that he did not desire to die. He feigned a reeling weakness, relaxed his grip, swayed sideways, and then suddenly caught the other two in a new grip, crushed their faces together, flung them off, and ran. It was but for an instant that his feet were the only ones that echoed in the street. Then he knew that the others, too, were running. It was like one of those nightmares wherein one runs forever, leaden-footed, through a city of the dead. Roger turned sharply to the right. The sound of the other footsteps told that the pursuers also had turned that corner. Here was another street, a steep ascent. He ran more swiftly. He was running now for his life, the life that he held so cheap 3 minutes before. And all the streets were empty like dream streets, with all their windows dark and unhelpful, their doors fast closed against his need. Only now and again he glanced to right or left, if perchance some window might show light to justify a cry for help, some door advance the welcome of an open inch. There was at last such a door. He did not see it till it was almost behind him. Then there was the drag of the sudden stop, the eternal instant of indecision. Was there time? There must be. He dashed his fingers through the inch crack, grazing the backs of them, leapt within, drew the door outside. There was the sound of feet that went away. He found himself listening, and there was nothing to hear but the silence, and once, before he thought to twist his handkerchief round it, the drip of blood from his hand. By and by he knew that he was not alone in this house, for from far away there came the faint sound of a footstep, and, quite near, the answering echo of it. And at a window high up on the other side of the courtyard, a light showed. Light and sound and echo intensified, the light passing window after window, till at last it moved across the courtyard and the little trees threw black shifting shadows as it came towards him. A lamp in the hand of a man. It was a short, bald man with pointed beard and bright, friendly eyes. He held the lamp high as he came, and when he saw Roger he drew his breath in an inspiration that spoke of surprise, sympathy, pity. "Hold, he said, in a singularly pleasant voice. "That has been a misfortune? You are wounded, monsieur?" "Apaches," said Roger, and was surprised at the weakness of his own voice. "Your hand?" "My arm," said Roger. "Fortunately," said the other, "I am a surgeon. Allow me." He set the lamp on the step of a closed door, took off Roger's coat, and quickly tied his own handkerchief round the wounded arm. "Now," he said, "courage.
I am alone in the house. No one comes here but me. If you can walk up to my rooms, you will save us both much trouble. If you cannot, sit here, and I will fetch you a cordial. But I advise you not to try to walk. That porte cochere is, unfortunately, not very strong, and the lock is a common spring lock, and your friends may return with their friends, whereas the door across the courtyard is heavy, and the bolts are new.
Roger moved towards the heavy door whose bolts were new. The stairs seemed to go on forever. The doctor lent his arm, but the carved banisters and their lively shadows whirled before Roger's eyes. Also, he seemed to be shod with lead, and to have in his legs bones that were red-hot. Then the stairs ceased, and there was light, and a cessation of the dragging of those leaden feet. He was on a couch, and his eyes might close. When next he saw and heard, he was lying at ease, the close intimacy of a bandage clasping his arm, and in his mouth the vivid taste of some cordial. The doctor was sitting in an armchair near a table, looking benevolent through gold-rimmed pince-nez.
"Better," he said. "No, lie still. You'll be a new man soon."
"I am desolated," said Roger, "to have occasioned you all this trouble."
"Not at all," said the doctor. "We live to heal, and it is a nasty cut, that in your arm. If you are wise, you will rest at present. I shall be honored if you will be my guest for the night."
Roger again murmured something about trouble.
"In a big house like this," said the doctor, as it seemed a little sadly, "there are many empty rooms, and some rooms which are not empty. There is a bed altogether at your service, monsieur, and I counsel you not to delay in seeking it. You can walk?"
Roxham stood up. "Why, yes," he said, stretching himself. "I feel, as you say, a new man." A narrow bed and rush-bottomed chair showed like doll's house furniture in the large, high, gaunt room to which the doctor led him.
"You are too tired to undress yourself," said the doctor. "Rest, only rest,"
and covered him with a rug, snugly tucked him up, and left him.
"I leave the door open," he said, "in case you should have any fever. Good night. Do not torment yourself. All goes well."
Then he took away the lamp, and Roxham lay on his back and saw the shadows of the window frames cast by the street lamps on the high ceiling. His eyes, growing accustomed to the darkness, perceived the carving of the white-panelled walls and mantelpiece. There was a door in the room, another door than the one which the doctor had left open. Roger did not like open doors. The other door, however, was closed. He wondered where it led, and whether it were locked. Presently he got up to see. It was locked. He lay down again. His arm gave him no pain, and the night's adventure did not seem to have overset his nerves. He felt, on the contrary, calm, confident, extraordinarily at ease, and master of himself. The trouble, how could that ever have seemed important? This calmness, it felt like the calmness that precedes sleep. Yet sleep was far from him. What was it that kept sleep away? The bed was comfortable, the pillows soft. What was it? It came to him presently that it was the scent which distracted him, worrying him with a memory that he could not define. A faint scent of... what was it? Perfumery? Yes, and camphor, and something else, something vaguely disquieting. He had not noticed it before he had risen and tried the handle of that other door, but now... He covered his face with the sheet, but through the sheet he smelt it still. He rose and threw back one of the long French windows. It opened with a click and a jar, and he looked across the dark well of the courtyard. He leaned out, breathing the chill, pure air of the May night, but when he withdrew his head, the scent was there again. Camphor, perfume, and something else. What was it that it reminded him of? He had his knee on the bed edge when the answer came to that question. It was the scent that had struck at him from the darkened room when, a child, clutching at a grown-up hand, he had been led to the bed where, amid flowers, something white lay under a sheet. His mother, they had told him. It was the scent of death, disguised with drugs and perfumes. He stood up and went, with carefully controlled swiftness, toward the open door. He wanted light and a human voice. The doctor was in the room upstairs. The doctor was face to face with him on the landing, not a yard away, moving towards him quietly in shoeless feet. "I can't sleep," said Roxham, a little wildly. "It's too dark, and—"
"Come upstairs," said the doctor, and Roxham went.
There was comfort in the large, lighted room. A green shaded lamp stood on the table. "What's behind that door?" said Roxham abruptly. "That door downstairs."
"Specimens," the doctor answered. "Preserved specimens. My line is physiological research. You understand?"
So that was it. "I feel quite well, you know," said Roxham, laboriously explaining. "Fit as any man. Only I can't sleep."
"I see," said the doctor.
"It's the scent from your specimens, I think," Roxham went on. "There's something about that scent."
"Yes,"
said the doctor. "It's very odd." Roxham was leaning his elbow on his knee and his chin on his hand. "I feel so frightfully well, and yet there's a strange feeling."
"Yes," said the doctor. "Yes, tell me exactly how you feel."
"I feel," said Roxham slowly, "like a man on the crest of a wave." The doctor stood up.
"You feel well, happy, full of life and energy, as though you could walk to the world's end, and yet—"
"And yet," said Roger, "as though my next step might be my last, as though I might step into a grave." He shuddered.
Do you, asked the doctor anxiously, do you feel thrills of pleasure, something like the first waves of chloroform, thrills running through from your hair to your feet?"
"I felt all that," said Roger slowly, "downstairs before I opened the window." The doctor looked at his watch, frowned, and got up quickly.
"There is very little time," he said.
Suddenly, Roger felt an unexplained thrill of pain. The doctor went to a long laboratory bench with bottle-filled shelves above it, and on it crucibles and retorts, test tubes, beakers, all a chemist's apparatus, reached a bottle from the shelf and measured out certain drops into a graduated glass, added water, and stirred it with a glass rod.
"Drink that,"
he said. "No," said Roger, and as he spoke a thrill like the first thrill of the first chloroform wave swept through him, and it was a thrill not of pleasure, but of pain. "No," he said, and "Gah!" for the pain was sharp.
"If you don't drink," said the doctor carefully, "you are a dead man."
"You may be giving me poison," Roger gasped, his hands at his heart.
"I may," said the doctor. "What do you suppose poison makes you feel like? What do you feel like now?"
"I feel," said Roger, "like death." Every nerve, every muscle thrilled to a pain not too intense to be underlined by a shuddering nausea. "Like death," he said again.
"Then drink,"
cried the doctor, in tones of such cordial entreaty, such evident anxiety, that Roxham half held his hand out for the glass.
"Drink! Believe me, it is your only chance."
Again the pain swept through him like an electric current. The beads of sweat sprang out on his forehead.
"That wound," the doctor pleaded, standing over him with the glass held out. "For heaven's sake, drink! Don't you understand, man? You are poisoned. Your wound—"
"The knife?" Roxham murmured, and as he spoke his eyes seemed to swell in his head, and his head itself to grow enormous. "Do you know the poison? And its antidote?"
"I know all," the doctor soothed him. "Drink, then, my friend."
The pain caught him again in a clasp more close than any lover's. As the pain caught him again in a clasp more close than any lover's, he clutched at the glass and drank. The drug met the pain and mastered it. Roger, in the ecstasy of pain's cessation, saw the world fade and go out in a haze of vivid violet. 2. Faint films of lassitude shot with contentment wrapped him round. He lay passive as a man lies in the convalescence that follows a long fight with death. "I'm better now," he said, in a voice that was a whisper, tried to raise his hand from where it lay helpless in his sight, failed, and lay looking at it in confident repose. "Much better."
"Yes,"
said the doctor, and his pleasant, soft voice had grown softer, pleasanter.
"You are now in the second stage. An interval is necessary before you can pass to the third. I will enliven the interval by conversation. Is there anything you would like to know?"
"Nothing," said Roger. "I am quite happy, quite contented."
"This is very interesting," said the doctor. "Tell me exactly how you feel."
Roger faintly and slowly told him.
"Ah," the doctor said, "I have not before heard this. You are the only one of them all who ever passed the first stage. The others—"
"The others?" said Roger, but he did not care much about the others.
"The others," said the doctor, frowning, "were unsound, decadent students, degenerate Apaches. You are highly trained, in fine physical condition. And your brain! The Lord be good to the Apaches who so delicately excited it to just the degree of activity needed for my purpose."
"The others?" Roxham insisted.
"The others? They are in the room whose door was locked. Look, you should be able to see them. The second drug should lay your consciousness before me like a sheet of white paper on which I can write what I choose. If I choose that you should see my specimens, allons donc, allons donc. I have no secrets from you now. Look, look, strain your eyes. In theory, I know all that you can do and feel and see in this second stage, but practically, enlighten me. Look, shut your eyes and look."
Roger closed his eyes and looked. He saw the gaunt, uncarpeted staircase, the open doors of the big rooms, passed the locked door, and it opened at his touch. The room inside was, like the other, spacious and panelled. A lighted lamp with a blue shade hung from the ceiling, and below it an effect of spread whiteness. Roger looked. There were things to be seen. With a shudder, he opened his eyes on the doctor's delightful room, the doctor's intent face.
"What did you say?" the doctor asked. "Tell me."
"Did you kill them all?" Roger asked back.
"They died of their own inherent weakness," the doctor said. "And you saw them?"
"I saw," said Roger, "the quiet people lying all along the floor in their death clothes, the people who have come in at that door of yours that is a trap, for robbery or curiosity or shelter, and never gone out any more."
"Right," said the doctor. "Right. My theory is proved at every point. You can see what I choose you to see. Yes, decadence all. It was in embalming that I was a specialist before I began these other investigations."
"What?" Roger whispered. "What is it all for?"
"To make the Superman," said the doctor. "I will tell you."
He told. It was a long story. The story of a man's life, a man's work, a man's dreams, hopes, ambitions.
"The secret of life," the doctor ended. "That is what all the alchemists sought. They sought it where fate pleased. I sought it where I have found it, in death."
Roger thought of the room behind the locked door. "And the secret is?" asked Roger.
"I have told you," said the doctor impatiently. "It is in the third drug that life, splendid, superhuman life, is found. I've tried it on animals. Always they became perfect, all that an animal should be. And more, too. Much more. They were too perfect, too near humanity. They looked at me with human eyes. I could not let them live. Such animals it is not necessary to embalm. I had a laboratory in those days, and assistants. They called me the Prince of Vivisectors."
The man on the sofa shuddered.
"I am naturally," the doctor went on, "a tender-hearted man. You see it in my face. My voice proclaims it. Think what I have suffered in the sufferings of these poor beasts who never injured me. May God bear witness that I have not buried my talent. I have been faithful. I have laid it down all, love and joy and pity and the little beautiful things of life, all on the altar of science, and seen them consume away. I deserve my heaven, if ever man did, and now, by all the saints in heaven, I am near it."
"What is the third drug?" Roger asked, lying limp and flat on his couch.
"It is the elixir of life," said the doctor. I am not its discoverer. The old alchemists knew it well, but they failed because they sought to apply the elixir to a normal, that is, a diseased and faulty, body. I knew better. One must have first a body abnormally healthy, abnormally strong. Then, not the elixir, but the two drugs that prepare. The first excites prematurely the natural conflict between the principles of life and death, and then, just at the point where death is about to win his victory, the second drug intensifies life so that it conquers, intensifies, and yet chastens. Then the whole life of the subject, risen to an ecstasy, falls prone in an almost voluntary submission to the coming superlife. Submission. The garrison must surrender before the splendid conqueror can enter and make the citadel his own. Do you understand? Do you submit?"
"I submit," said Roger, for indeed he did, but soon, quite soon, I will not submit. He was too weak to be wise, or those words had remained unspoken. The doctor sprang to his feet.
"It works too quickly," he cried. "Everything works too quickly with you. Your condition is too perfect. So now I bind you."
From a drawer beneath the bench where the bottles gleamed, the doctor drew rolls of bandages, violet like the haze that had drowned, at the urgence of the second drug, the consciousness of Roger. He moved, faintly resistant, on his couch. The doctor's hands, most gently, most irresistibly, controlled his movement.
"Lie still," said the gentle, charming voice. "Lie still. All is well."
The clever, soft hands were unrolling the bandages, passing them round arms and throat, under and over the soft, narrow couch.
"I cannot risk your life, my poor boy. The least movement of yours might ruin everything. The third drug, like the first, must be offered directly to the blood which absorbs it. I bound the first drug as an unguent upon your knife wound."
The swift hands passed the soft bandages back and forth, over and under. Flashes of violet passed to and fro in the air like the shuttle of a weaver through his warp. As the bandage clasped his knees, Roger moved.
"For God's sake, no!" the doctor cried. "The time is so near. If you cease to submit, it is death."
With an incredible accelerated swiftness, he swept the bandages round and round knees and ankles, drew a deep breath, stood upright.
"I must make an incision," he said. "In the head this time. It will not hurt. See, I spray it with the Constantia Nepenthe. That I also discovered. My boy, in a moment you know all things. You are as a god. Be patient. Preserve your submission."
And Roger, with life and will resurgent hammering at his heart, preserved it. He did not feel the knife that made the cross cut on his temple, but he felt the hot spurt of blood that followed the cut. He felt the cool flap of a plaster spread with some sweet, clean-smelling unguent that met the blood and stanched it. There was a moment, or was it hours, of nothingness. Then from that cut on his forehead, there seemed to radiate threads of infinite length, and of a strength Let's try that again. Then from that cut on his forehead there seemed to radiate threads of infinite length, and of a strength that one could trust to, threads that linked one to all knowledge past and present. He felt that he controlled all wisdom, as a driver controls his four-in-hand. Knowledge, he perceived, belonged to him as the air belongs to the eagle. He swam in it, as a great fish in a limitless ocean. He closed his eyes and met those of the doctor, who sighed as one to whom breath has grown difficult.
All goes well. Oh, my boy, was it not worth it? What do you feel?
I know everything, said Roger, with full stops between the words.
Everything? The future?
No, I know all that man has ever known.
Look back into the past. See someone. See Pharaoh. You see him on his throne?
Not on his throne. He is whispering in a corner of his great gardens to a girl who is the daughter of a water carrier.
Bah! Any poet of my dozen decadents who lie so still could have told me that. Tell me secrets. The Masque de Fer.
The other told a tale, wild and incredible, but it satisfied the listener.
That, too, it might be imagination. Tell me the name of the woman I loved, and
the echo of the name of the anesthetic came to Roger. Constantia, said he, in an even voice.
Ah! The doctor cried. Now I see you know all things. It was not murder. I hoped to dower her with all the splendors of this super life.
Her bones lie under the lilacs where you used to kiss her in the spring, said Roger, quite without knowing what it was that he was going to say.
It is enough,
the doctor cried. He sprang up, arranged certain bottles and glasses on a table convenient to his chair.
You know all things. It was not a dream, this, the dream of my life. It is true. It is a fact accomplished. Now I, too, will know all things. I will be as the gods.
He sought among leather cases on a far table and came back swiftly into the circle of light that lay below the green-shaded lamp. Roger, floating contentedly on the new sea of knowledge that seemed to support him, turned his eyes on the trouble that had driven him out of that large, empty studio so long ago, so far away. His newfound wisdom laughed at that problem, laughed and solved it. To end that trouble I must do so-and-so, and say such-and-such, Roger told himself again and again. And now the doctor, standing by the table, laid on it his pale, plump hand outspread. He drew a knife from a case, a long, shiny knife, and scored his hand across and across its back, as a cook scores pork for cooking. The slow blood followed the cuts in beads and lines. Into the cuts he dropped a green liquid from a little bottle, replaced its stopper, bound up his hand, and sat down.
The beginning of the first stage, he said. Almost at once I shall begin to be a new man. It will work quickly. My body, like yours, is sane and healthy.
There was a long silence.
Ah, but this is good, the doctor broke it to say. I feel the hand of life sweeping my nerves like harp strings.
Roger had been thinking, the old common sense that guides an ordinary man breaking through this consciousness of illimitable wisdom. You had better, he said, unbind me. When the hand of death sweeps your nerves, you may need help.
No, the doctor said, and no, and no, and no many times. I am afraid of you. You know all things, and even in your body you are stronger than I.
And then suddenly and irresistibly the pain caught him. Roger saw his face contorted with agony, his hands clenching on the arm of his chair, and it seemed that either this man was less able to bear pain than he, or that the pain was much more violent than had been his own. And the plump, pale hand, writhing and distorted by anguish, again and again drew near to take the glass that stood ready on the table, and with convulsive self-restraint, again and again, drew back without it. The short May night was waning. The shiver of dawn rustled the leaves of the plant whose leaves were like red, misshaped hearts.
Now!
The doctor screamed the word, grasped the glass, drained it, and sank back in his chair. His hand struck the table beside him. Looking at his limp body and head thrown back, one could almost see the cessation of pain, the coming of kind oblivion. 3. The dawn had grown to daylight, a poor, gray, rain-stained daylight, not strong enough to pierce the curtains and persiennes, and yet not so weak that it could mock the lamp, now burnt low and smelling vilely. And yet not so weak but that it could mock the lamp, now burnt low and smelling vilely. Roger lay very still on his couch, a man wounded, anxious, and extravagantly tired. In those hours of long, slow dawning, face to face with the unconscious figure in the chair, he had felt, slowly and little by little, the recession of that sea of knowledge on which he had felt himself float in such large content. The sea had withdrawn itself, leaving him high and dry on the shore of the normal. The only relic that he had clung to, and that he still grasped, was the answer to the problem of the trouble, the only wisdom that he had put into words. These words remained to him, and he knew that they held wisdom. Very simple wisdom, too. To end the trouble, I must do so, and say such and such. Slowly, a dampness spread itself over Roxham's forehead, and tingled among the roots of his hair. He writhed in his bonds. They held fast. He could not move hand or foot. Only his head could turn a little, so that he could at will see the doctor and not see him. A shaft of desolate light pierced the persienne at its hinge, and rested on the table, where an overturned glass lay. Roxham thrilled from head to foot. The body in the chair stirred, hardly stirred, shivered, rather, and a very faint, far-away voice said, "Now the third. Give me the third." "What?" said Roger, stupidly, and he had to clear his throat twice before he could say even that. "The moment is now," said the doctor. "I remember all. I made you a god. Give me the third drug." "Where is it?" Roger asked. "It is at my elbow," the doctor murmured. I submit. Give me the third drug, and let me be as you are." "As I am?" said Roger. "You forget. I am bound." "Break your bonds. Break your bonds," the doctor urged in a quick, small voice. "I trust you now. You are stronger than all men, as you are wiser. Stretch your muscles, and the bandages will fall asunder like snow wreaths." "It is too late," Roxham said, and laughed. "All that is over. I am not wise any more, and I have only the strength of a man. I am tired and wounded. I cannot break my bonds. I cannot help you." "But if you cannot help me, it is death," said the doctor. "It is death," said Roger. "Do you feel it coming on you?" "I feel life returning," said the doctor. "It is now the moment, the one possible moment, and I cannot reach it. Oh, give it me! Give it me!" Then Roger cried out suddenly, in a loud voice, "Now, by all that's sacred, you infernal decadent, I am glad that I cannot give it. Yes, if it costs me my life, it's worth it, you madman, so that your life ends too. Now be silent, and die like a man if you have it in you." Roger lay and watched him, and presently he writhed from the chair to the floor, tearing feebly at it with his fingers, moaned, shuddered, and lay very still. Of all that befell Roger in that house, the worst was now. For now he knew that he was alone with the dead, and between him and death stretched certain hours and days. For the porte-cochere was locked. The doors of the house itself were locked, heavy doors, and the locks new. "I am alone in this house," the doctor had said. "No one comes here but me." No one would come. He would die there. He, Roger Roxham. Poor old Roger Roxham, who was no one's enemy but his own. Tears pricked his eyes. He shook his head impatiently, and they fell from his lashes. "You fool," he said. "Can't you die like a man either?" Then he set his teeth and made himself lie still. It seemed to him that now despair laid her hand on his heart. But, to speak truth, it was hope whose hand lay there. This was so much more than a man should be called on to bear. It could not be true. It was an evil dream. He would awake presently. Or if it were, indeed, real, then someone would come. Someone must come. God could not let anybody come to save... God could not let nobody come to save him. And late at night, when heart and brain had been stretched almost to the point where both break and let in the sea of madness, someone came. The interminable day had worn itself out. Roger had screamed, yelled, shouted till his throat was dried up, his lips baked and cracked. No one heard. How should they? The twilight had thickened and thickened till at last it made a shroud for the dead man on the floor by the chair. And there were other dead men in that house, and as Roger ceased to see the one, he saw the others. The quiet, awful faces, the lean hands, the straight, stiff limbs laid out one beyond another in the room of death. They, at least, were not bound. If they should rise in their white wrappings and, crossing that empty sleeping chamber very softly, come slowly up the stairs... A stair creaked. His ears, strained with hours of listening, thought themselves befooled, but his cowering heart knew better. Again a stair creaked. There was a hand on the door. "Then it is all over," said Roger in the darkness, "and I am mad." The door opened very slowly, very cautiously. There was no light, only the sound of soft feet and draperies that rustled. Then suddenly a match spurted. Light struck at his eyes, a flicker of lit candlewick steadying to flame. And the things that had come were not those quiet people creeping up to match their death with his death in life, but human creatures, alive, breathing, with eyes that moved and glittered, lips that breathed and spoke. "He must be here," one said. "Lisette watched all day. He never came out. He must be here. There is nowhere else." Then they set up the candle end on the table, and he saw their faces. They were the Apaches who had set on him in that lonely street, and who had sought him here, to set on him again. He sucked his dry tongue, licked his dry lips, and cried aloud, "Here I am! Oh, kill me! For the love of heaven, brothers, kill me now!" And even before he spoke, they had seen him, and seen what lay on the floor. "He died this morning. I am bound. Kill me, brothers. I cannot die slowly here alone. Oh, kill me for pity's sake!" But already the three were pressing on each other at a doorway suddenly grown too narrow. They could kill a living man, but they could not face death, quiet, enthroned. "For the love of heaven!" Roger screamed. "Have pity! Kill me outright! Come back! Come back!" And then, since even Apaches are human, they did come back. One of them caught up the candle and bent over Roger, knife in hand. "Make sure," said Roger through set teeth. "Nom de nom," said the Apache, with worse words, and cut the bandages here and here and here again, and there and lower, to the very feet. Then this good Samaritan helped Roger to rise, and when he could not stand, the Samaritan half pulled, half carried him down those many steps, till they came upon the others putting on their boots at the stair-foot. Then, between them, the three men carried the other out and slammed the outer door, and presently set him against a gate-post, in another street, and went their wicked ways. And after a time, a girl with furtive eyes brought brandy and a hoarse muttered kindnesses, and slid away in the shadows. Against that gate-post the police came upon him. They took him to the address they found on him. When they came to question him, he said, "Apaches," and his variations on that theme were deemed sufficient, though not one of them touched truth or spoke of the third drug. There has never been anything in the papers about that house. I think it is still closed, and inside it still lie the locked room, the very quiet people. Oh, keep skipping words. I think it is still closed, and inside it still lie in the locked room the very quiet people. And above, there is the room with the narrow couch and the scattered, cut, violet bandages, and the thing on the floor by the chair, under the lamp that burned itself out in that May dawning. And that was The Third Drug by E. Nesbit, written in 1908. And with that, we have to call it a day. When I know my schedule, I will post it in the Discord. Otherwise, catch as catch can, folks. As ever. As ever. Alrighty.
Yeah, man. There we go. Let me get another bookmark out here. There we are. Wondrous. What is this thing doing? There we go. Alrighty, so yeah, that'll do it for today. Thanks to everyone who tuned in. If you are tuning in after the fact, hi! I do these frequently. I am no longer on a set schedule. I used to be on a set schedule. I would like to go back to being on a set schedule, but for now that is not possible. But yeah, I do generally do them on weekdays, on weekdays starting at about noon U.S. East Coast time, EST. Usually I'm a few minutes late, but that's just me being late. But anyway, thanks to everyone who tuned in. Feel free to do that whenever you want. Otherwise, don't. Listen to them after the fact. It's easier. Geez, I think only like 2 installments for this one. I don't know, and that means I've got like another. I maybe could have gotten away with doing. Diaspora by Gregg Egan. Nah, that one's kind of long and dense. I don't think I could have finished it in only 2 weeks. So after we get through this, we'll find probably some more short stories. Maybe read through some astounding science fiction or similar, and interzone issues that have got shuffled away. And we'll see what happens. And then I'm on a 2-week break, and then it's back to business as usual. And I got a bunch of books I want to read aloud that are relatively recent affairs. So we'll see. Alrighty. With that, I'll leave you all. Stay safe, stay sane, be decent to each other, and toodaloo.